What is success for you if you take money out of it? Who do you want to be known as or known for? Who am I as a person if I'm not having this career?
The advisor needs to understand how important this is on the other side, because it really does deeply impact their entire part of their life and who they are and their identity.
Am I working on that person so when the business changes, fades, goes away, transitions, I still am who I was created to be, that means something to other people, that means something to me as the individual?
Welcome to the Total Succession Show. I'm your host, Tyson Ray, joined by Kim Cochenour. We're glad you're here. Today's conversation just might be the nudge you need to start preparing for what's next.
Today, we're talking about something that almost every advisor skips when they first start thinking about succession, and that's vision, which kind of cracks me up sometimes when I think about it, is because advisors are supposed to be planners. They're there to help people build a clear long-term path for success in their future, in their financial future. But when it comes to an advisor's own transition, most of them jump straight to the logistics, the spreadsheet. What's my business worth? Who's going to actually buy it? Those important questions that have to be answered when you come through to thinking through your succession. But without your vision, all of your tactics, all of your data is just numbers. It really just becomes a reactionary piece instead of being strategic. And so we want you to be focusing on a clear direction and actually putting together a timeline that helps you get there. That will help advisors get to a place where they don't end up regretting their transitions and they want it to be a win.
Yeah, so what I think happens, Kim, is that people get so focused on solving the problem, defining the problem as just succession or exiting their business. They don't realize that in doing so, they create there's a bigger problem to solve, which is who are you and what do you want to do with the rest of your life, which is a part of selling the business, but maybe it's not.
Very true. So if you're listening to this and you realize that you actually haven't done much of the vision work, don't beat yourself up. You're not alone. This is an opportunity for you to jump in, because we want you to create the space to get clear on what you want personally and professionally, so that the other decisions that you get to make along this process become easier. So we're going to break that down a little bit to help you start connecting the dots, thinking through the personal and professional vision first. So let's get really clear on what that looks like. Your two worlds have been intertwined for a very long time. You have developed friendships with your clients, and so there's not even that delineation anymore. You've been doing this for decades, and rightfully so, your identity is kind of wound in that. And so your personal vision and your professional vision have to work together, because that's how you've built your great career. So Tyson, you've worked through this a lot yourself. Talk about personal and professional vision and what advisors should be trying to think about here.
I say it all the time to clients that are retiring, even clients that are in their 70s and 80s. And what I say is, what do you want to do when you grow up?
Hmm.
And it's asking the question, both personally and professionally, because even in retirement, I think people are trying to define what is that purpose in life? What are they working towards? I think we're all created and meant to make an impact and be purposeful. I think death happens when we sit in a chair and rot for doing nothing. And without defining what you want to do, both personally and professionally, in thinking about what and why you're going to exit, you're going to probably set yourself up to have some regrets because you didn't realize what you want to do on the other side or what you're retiring into. And the hard part with that is that this business can be so consuming. I used to talk to financial advisors at training classes, and I basically was like, the components that I'd draw like a cross or a circle, and it was kind of up, down, and sideways. And it's like, for some people, you have a faith or a spiritual component at the top, and then you have kind of the family and relationship component on one side, and then you kind of have the professional and work component on the bottom. And then over here on this other side, you have yourself. And the funny thing about this job or this career of financial advising is you are helping people, and it can suck everything out of you, and it can be your all-inclusive affirmation and making a difference. It's never done. It's never ending. And what happens over time, and I've been witness to this with advisors that I've transitioned into retirement. I've been witness to this by people that have mentored me or I've learned from them not to do, that because the business becomes so all-inclusive, their relationships suffer,
Mm.
their self-health, uh, identity, who they are suffers, and ultimately, I think their faith and their spirit suffers because it becomes this work, and then heaven forbid you sell the company and that work is now done and there's nothing left. There's a tension constantly between while I'm working now, between who I am as a person and who I am professionally, and I try and be uh, working on both of those. But when you start talking about succession and letting go of some of this, it's really starting to think about who am I as a person if I'm not having this career.
And so it kind of leads into the importance of it is truly the advisor needs to understand how important this is on the other side because it really does deeply impact their entire part of their life and who they are and their identity. Um, I think it might be helpful if you share an example of any of your fellow advisors who are kind of surprised on the other side because they didn't do any of that work on the front end. Do you have an example you can share?
Yep. And so examples would be I can think of somebody I work with. We're going to call him Henry. Um, and I started working with Henry, and he was in his mid 60s, and he took a liking to me. And I was in my early 20s because I was interested in his business. And the more I found out about why we were able to work together, as I was stepping in and filling the void that he had had 2 sons and a daughter, and those 2 sons who he wanted to go in the business because the business was his everything, right? So of course I want them to be in the business. Well, they resented the business so much by the time they got out of college, they wanted nothing to do with the business. They wouldn't even come in
Mm,
the office, nothing to do with it. They resented the fact that they lost the dad at the baseball game or the soccer game or the being, coming home at night because he was too busy making phone calls, that those family relationships sacrificed. This same Henry, uh, had a wife that wanted him to retire at 65 and he kept working. And part of the enthusiasm of me coming into this relationship is I was the hope that, oh wait, I might be able to help in a succession or taking this practice over. His daughter was his assistant. She wanted to please her father, so she went into the business and was assisting him, but never liked the business. And in fact, when we reached the point of realizing that she didn't want to continue, when dad finally retired, that she went off and pursued becoming a French teacher and finally kind of stepped into who she was. But the
hmm,
the whole family suffered or focused around a rather successful business in ways that it probably didn't need to. And it wasn't until literally they went to Mexico with his wife to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary that she passed.
mm,
He hadn't retired yet. He was 72. That it kind of woke him up to, "What am I doing?"
mhm,
And he was blessed to find somebody else. After a few years, were able to kinda get married again, and and then go into that marriage and have the retirement that he'd worked his whole life to have, but never allowed himself to have. And he
yeah,
could have had it without having to sell the company. He
yeah,
could have had it with some perspective and creating some space in some ways to do some things differently. Succession
mhm,
doesn't have to be the end, uh, but it's just trying to keep in mind, who am I if I'm
mhm,
not in this business, and am I working on that person so when the business changes, fades, goes away, transitions, I still am who I was created to be, that means something to other people, that means something to me as the individual.
yeah,
The clients can suck you in, the business can suck you in and rob you of everything. I told my wife all the time, she's like, "Why don't you come home?" I'm like, "'Cause I can make another phone call and the person I'm calling is thrilled I'm calling them." 'Cause they're happy to hear from me. We're talking about things that are important, especially if there's good news involved, and then I walk in the door and it's just like, the kid is sick, right? You gotta take the dog out, you gotta do this stuff, and it's not necessarily this affirmation that you get from these client relationships, and the trick or the struggle as an advisor is to make sure you leave enough energy in the tank to go home to those that you love that give to them as well, or you
mhm,
risk affecting those relationships. So this whole idea of succession um, is an ongoing understanding of who do I need to make sure I stay true to outside of just the business, or do I need to work on that person? Because if you don't have that, if that's not healthy, if that's not successful, and then you transition from the business, you might have a rough reality, or I've seen advisors have a rough reality. I know of another advisor who was very excited to sell the practice. We'll call him Ed, and Ed would, got the multiple, got the money. He had the offer. It was everything that he wanted. He got it. He took it. And within 12 months of getting the money, he wished he wouldn't have sold the practice.
Mhm.
And it was because he missed talking to the friends, he missed interacting with because these were like family, and, he thought he was gonna go hunt and play golf. Well, he did enough of that in 12 months that wasn't all of a sudden when the hobby became something you do every day, it lost some of the escape that it was, or the refreshment that it was. It was just like he wanted more out of life than that, and he went through and started still trying to figure out, "Who am I and what do I wanna be doing with this time that I have?" That he lost when he sold the business.
So I think what's a helpful thing is there's a couple of questions you probably need to start asking yourself in an honest place, to really help you start to see, like really see what you need in this process. So before we kind of dive into that, I want to encourage you to hit pause on the podcast, either mentally or literally, if you need to, and kind of think through this. It's not a checklist style of questions. This is actually meant for you to be guided as a reflection and not to just simply respond. So you don't have to have the answers right now. It's just allowing you to kind of get honest with yourself and what you need to start thinking through as you start thinking about your plan and your exit. So if you're on a walk, sitting at your desk, driving in your car, I really want you to try and hear these questions to help them stick, make a note, and then come back to it later and so it can kind of sit with you. So Tyson, go ahead and kind of dig into some of those questions.
I think to summarize it, and what was the tool that helped me, see a bigger picture that I want you to see as you're listening to this is, okay, we are attending your funeral and people are talking about you. And what what is it that you want them to say? And then if you're honest with yourself, what are they going to say? And so I went through an exercise of writing out a eulogy. Now that sounds, I don't know what the word is, Kim,
Morbid.
okay, morbid. Um, and yet it's like in the end, because I've attended enough clients' funerals to know, it's like they don't talk about the business plan. They don't talk about task lists. They don't talk about dollars and cents. And, they talked about who this person really was. And I went and wrote a one page, what do I want my wife to say? What do I want my sons to say? What do I want my clients to say? What do I want my peers to say? And on an annual basis, I take that out and read it, and I am asking myself, am I doing the things and living out the purposes that will make this true? And part of that just really simply is, okay, it's the greatest test for me of what do I really want? Not what does the world say you should have, not the advertisements of the friends. It's like by myself, I sat down and it's just like, what do I want? I want my wife to say that I was everything she wanted in a husband. What do you want your spouse to say if you are no longer there? And then are you doing the things to be that person? Uh, if I wasn't running this business and I had the opportunity, or even in running this business, who do I want to be known for that's outside of being a financial advisor? And for me, it was getting involved in trying to make an impact in the world or break the cycle of poverty and get involved in a nonprofit. Uh, and try and impact people's lives that have nothing. I spend all day long with clients that have in some cases, everything that they ever wanted. What is it to try and go make a difference in other people's the lives of the neglected? So said differently, what is it that you would want to be doing or be known for outside of just being a successful business person? Because that's one dimensional. There are other dimensions out there. What do you want your kids to say about you? What do you want your best friend to say about you? What did you do with these people from a time and interacting? Um, what do you want your clients to say about you, and what difference did you make in their lives? we had the ability, Jenny and I, um, 20 plus years ago to fund an adoption. And I had this little baby girl bouncing on my lap 6 months later that got adopted out of a family she would have been she was the sixth child. It was the fifth father of this woman. It was just, um, a life-changing experience. And it dawned on me, it's like, this is success. I think right
Mm.
about the same time
Yeah.
I had hit some plateau of $1 million producer and had all these assets and clients and accolades and awards and stuff in the paper, and all of a sudden it's just like, "Oh my gosh, no, this life has changed. We're, like, gonna change the legacy of this child for forever." And it redefined success for me. So what is success for you if you take money out of it? Or what is success for you if you take the statistics or the dollars out of it? Who do you wanna be known as or known for? Um And then if you're honest with yourself, what are the things you look back? What are the things that you regret? And if you regret them, what are you doing to not do them again to avoid that baggage that we all take with us, especially if we keep stumbling over the same mistakes? Um, and that became kind of the blueprint of what the rest of life gets to kind of look like.
So, a couple other questions I kind of want to throw out there for advisors to be thinking about as they're starting, like before they kind of start planning. Um, Tyson talked about this a little bit, but specifically, what does your family or spouse want from you? Um, and that transition is about them too. How do you want your clients to experience this transition? What would a successful exit feel like? Not just financially, but emotionally. This is where your legacy and fulfillment and your purpose show up. And so think through those a little bit and really kind of spend some time digging into those because a lot will come up for you. Tyson, I think it'd be helpful when you were kind of planning and thinking through those things. What was the hardest question for you to answer?
That's an easy one. And it was to answer, what does Jenny want? What does my wife want? And what's crazy
Mm.
is that I actually handed her a legal pad early in our marriage and just asked her, like, what do you want? Because ironically, she had an answer. And I ask her every year, what do you want? In case it changes. Because you don't have to do this, and you don't have to do this alone. Because a lot of times the very people that, using my analogy of the eulogy, the very people you want saying these things about you have cares for you and see blind spots for you that can speak truth into you about what they want for you or what they think is best for you, and that it's also maybe what you want from them. That it may be asking them the questions because they have some of the answers.
Yeah, that's very true. So, the C stage of the space framework isn't just the first step, it's the foundation. You cannot skip it because without that, the rest of this won't hold. Without your vision, your preparation is pointless and aimless. The action will feel very shaky and unsettling. Your commitment will be half hearted and you won't make it through. And then, how are you going to exit? You won't be able to do that successfully. It'll feel rushed, it'll feel chaotic, it could be drawn out. But if you take the time to be clear, you really know what you want and the things will start to align. So that's what we want is we want your decisions to feel easier, that you can stop guessing and actually start planning your exit. Now that we've walked through a little bit more of the importance of the vision and you've asked yourself some of those deeper questions, it's kind of like, okay, when am I actually supposed to do this? Uh, Most advisors don't struggle with the knowing. They know they need to do this. It's just you struggle making the space because, as Tyson said, you've got priorities coming at you from all different directions. It's easy to have a packed calendar meeting with clients. So, we have a couple challenges for you to actually utilize this episode to make a powerful step forward. So, challenge yourself by the end of the month. See if you can actually take these 3 next steps to help you see your future. So, idea one, block a morning. Literally pick a morning that you know you have few client phone calls. You know it's one of those days that you can set it aside for thinking, not working, no email. Put your cell phone or cell phones in the other room and just have the space to sit with those questions. Idea 2, talk it out. Sometimes you actually need someone to process those things with. Your spouse might be a great person for that, or they're not. Find a business coach or even another trusted advisor or a friend in the business or outside of the business that you can start processing that with. And 3, picture your successor in your role. What values do you hope they protect? What are you okay letting go of? That will help give you some insight to your values and your priorities. And if you actually do it, we'd actually like to hear what you came up with. Send us a message, tag us online, something that you realize, no matter how small. We really want to know how this is helping you make progress. So Tyson, I'd love for you to help round us out. For those listening, what's the most important thing you want them to remember about seeing their exit and creating a vision?
What I want them to come away with is it's a constantly evolving picture. And sometimes the way it evolves is you got to restart with a blank slate and ask yourself the same questions to see if the answers are the same. The mistake I made in the past was is I wrote some things down and I'd go back and read them and wouldn't really admit that, no, some of this needs to change.
Hmm.
And it doesn't change by being in the office. It changes by finding time of blocking. The funny thing about a morning is your days can run away with you, but if you start, for me, it's a cup of coffee, right? If I forget that first cup, like I know if I'm not having that first cup of coffee, and I just like, I'm going to spend my first cup of coffee by myself in the quietness of my house, everyone's sleeping. And I'm just going to sit there and watch what comes to mind about this topic of succession or the future, or what do I really want? And then be honest with myself of what the answers are and aren't and what needs to change. Um,
Hmm.
the most important part of it is that creating the space, hence the acronym, creating the space in your life to be able to process this for yourself. Because if you don't, I think you're going to wish you did.
That's wise. So if you've made it this far, you're already doing something most advisors never do. You're not just thinking about the how of your succession, you're getting really serious about the why. And that's what sets up a successful transition apart from the ones that are a disaster. It's about what's in the design and the purpose behind it, and the clarity will help guide it along the way. So, as you start making space for what you really want, this is a great beginning to do that. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with more conversations like this.
I've wrestled with these things myself, and that's exactly why I created something to help you do it with less stress and more direction. My book, Total Succession, simplifies the process by breaking it down into 5 clear steps to help you exit on your terms, with confidence, full compensation, and your client's best interests at heart. You can also head to TotalSuccession.com for 1, a free guide that you can use as a starter to work through the see, prepare, act, commit, exit framework, and 2, for another freebie, my Advisor to Advisor Retirement Readiness Assessment. Remember, you only exit your business once. Create the space to make it happen. Thank you for listening. Until next time.